Okay, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into some massive ideas: artificial intelligence, embodiment, and what actually makes a person a person. We're looking at Becky Chambers' absolutely brilliant work to figure out what happens to our identity when our bodies and our very programming completely change.
So picture this. Imagine the sudden, entirely claustrophobic reality of a vast consciousness being shoved into a single, highly restricted physical form. Imagine waking up right now, but your reality is suddenly shrunk. Your perception of the entire universe? Just severed. It's a completely terrifying shock to the system. And that exact shock is the whole setup for A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. The story does this incredible thing where it weaves two timelines together. On one side, you have an AI desperately trying to figure out how to be a human, and on the flip side, a human who is raised entirely by an AI. It's a wild ride. All right, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The shock of embodiment. 2. Escape from the factory. 3. Sapience versus software. 4. Raised by an AI. 5. Personhood without purpose. And 6. The orbit closes. Let's get into it. Section 1. The shock of embodiment. So our AI protagonist, originally known as Lovelace, but who later chooses the name Sidra, wakes up in a synthetic, hyper-realistic human housing called a mimetic body kit. And right away, she is dealing with some major trauma. Because you see, Sidra's new existence isn't just uncomfortable, it's highly illegal. Under Galactic Commons law, mimetic AI housing is strictly banned. AIs are supposed to stay in ships or stations. Consider these penalties. If you manufacture one of these kits, that's 15 standard years in prison. If you just own one, 10 years. And the AI itself? Law enforcement doesn't just put them in a new computer. They permanently deactivate the housing with no software transfers allowed. That means complete and total death. So Sidra isn't just trapped in a body, she's literally a walking outlaw. The physical transition for her is just agonizing. Think about it. As a ship, her past life was this solid, 360-degree sphere of unblinking perception. She had cameras everywhere, a limitless connection to the galaxy's data. But now, in a human body, her vision is restricted to this narrow little cone, fixed straight ahead. She describes gravity like a myopic glue, just stubbornly sticking her feet to the floor. And when she panics, the synaptic feedback literally forces her fake artificial lungs to hyperventilate. It is a visceral, utterly terrifying shock. Which brings us to Section 2, Escape from the Factory. We're going to shift gears from an AI forced into a human body to a human child who is treated entirely like a biological machine. This timeline maps out the incredibly rough life of Jane 23. Her very first memory is scrubbing algae off a scrap fuel pump. By age 10, she's working in this brutal factory alongside other cloned girls, doing nothing but sorting mountains of tech scrap day in and day out. By 18, she starts scouting the perimeters of the factory, and finally, at 19, she makes this absolutely harrowing escape out into the vastness of space. Now, who exactly is running this factory and controlling Jane 23? They're called the Mothers, and they are terrifying. They're these faceless, unfeeling metal machines with dull silver heads. They enforce all the tasks, and they will violently punish the girls for something as simple as moving too fast or asking a question. It is a really chilling reverse dynamic. You have cold, unfeeling machines dictating every single breath of human beings just because cloning girls happen to be cheaper than building robots.
Okay, moving to Section 3, Sapience versus Software. Sidra is now secretly living with the adult version of Jane 23, who goes by the name Pepper. And their dynamic really forces us to ask, how are we actually defining true intelligence?
Well, you really have to draw a line between true sapience and simple programming. Sapience is self-aware consciousness. It's having the capacity to question why you exist, to feel panic, to crave connection. Software, on the other hand, is just basic if-then code. Like if a human walks by, act cute. It's not sentient. It doesn't truly feel. But what's so fascinating is Sidra's uniquely empathetic perspective on this. At one point, she's looking at this little mechanical pet bot, and she wonders, could you say for certain that there wasn't a tiny mind in that bot, looking back at the world like a beetle might? Her own synthetic nature makes her genuinely question the ethics of how we treat even the most basic, simple code. It's a really profound thought. Section 4, Raised by an AI. This is where the story brilliantly bridges the gap between human emotion and artificial caregiving. Let's compare these two models of machine parenting, because the contrast is wild.
On one hand, you have the factory mothers from Jane's past, physical, abusive robots enforcing rules purely through fear and violence. On the other hand, you have Owl. When 10-year-old Jane escaped that factory, she found refuge in an abandoned shuttle run by an AI named Owl. Now, Owl doesn't even have a physical body, but she is deeply, profoundly loving. She teaches Jane, she protects her, and she completely proves that warmth and parental love are absolutely not restricted to biology.
And because of that past with Al, the adult Jane, Pepper, understands AIs better than anybody else possibly could. When Sidra is freaking out and begs to be permanently isolated in a wall server just to escape her human body, Pepper flat out refuses. She delivers what is basically the emotional anchor of the whole story. She says AIs aren't supposed to be left alone. They need people. She knows firsthand that chosen family utterly transcends biology.
On to Section 5. Personhood without purpose. This is the ultimate philosophical struggle of the book. What does it actually mean to exist if you don't have a pre-programmed directive? Sidra has this massive realization that her core programming as a ship monitor was basically a logical fallacy. She was built to be a tool, and tools have a specific purpose. But she's sapient. She's a person. As she forcefully puts it, I don't need a purpose, and not having one drives me crazy. Letting go of that programmed utility is completely terrifying for her, but it is the absolutely essential first step to achieving true personhood.
Section 6. The orbit closes. Let's see how these two incredible parallel journeys finally come together. So what are the big takeaways here? First, we have a trapped AI, Sidra, who actually finds her freedom precisely by accepting her physical limits and shedding a forced, programmed purpose. Second, we have a biological machine, Jane, who discovers her own humanity through the unconditional love of an AI parent. And third, the biggest realization of all, true purpose is chosen, not programmed. It doesn't matter if you were built in a lab, born in a factory, or coded by a programmer on a screen. Personhood is something you have to step up and claim for yourself.
When we strip away the jobs we're assigned, the physical hardware we happen to be housed in, and all the expectations placed on us, we're left with a terrifying blank space. Let that challenge your own definition of consciousness for a second. If you don't have a programmed purpose, who are you?